Billions of dollars are on the line for victims of the opioid crisis, and it could all come down to the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices heard arguments this week on whether to approve a bankruptcy deal for Purdue Pharma. If approved, the company would pay $6 billion to help victims of the opioid crisis. It would also protect the Sackler family from liability in any future lawsuits.
So joining us now to talk more about this is our 9 News legal analyst, Whitney Traylor. And while we're waiting for that decision, can you just give us a little bit of insight into how this ended up in bankruptcy court and how that's affecting the lawsuit?
Yeah, that's a great question to start with, and it's an important question because bankruptcy is really unique as it relates to litigation. So when you're in litigation, if you file for bankruptcy, it stops all the cases against you. And so that's why you may remember years ago before Donald Trump was president, and he said, oh, I'm using the bankruptcy laws to my advantage, when he had all these businesses and people were saying, well, why are you filing for bankruptcy? And so what it does is it prevents, it stops all the litigation. And in here, there were all the lawsuits from the states. There were about 40 states that had filed lawsuits and a number of individuals. And so they were looking at trillions of dollars in claims. And so what they did was they filed bankruptcy, and this is Chapter 11, so it's a reorg. And so what happens is the trustee takes all their assets and essentially pays out the creditors, but they're paid just, you know, a fraction of what they're owed, but at least they get something is the idea.
The opioid crisis, especially in certain parts of the country, is absolutely devastating to families and to people and to anybody who becomes addicted to these drugs. Right. Help us understand the legal issues here that the Supreme Court is considering when they're trying to decide a case as big as this.
Right, so this is what I just explained would be a standard bankruptcy court. They file for bankruptcy, the creditors go, they approve it, that's it. But here the caveat was the Sackler family would individually not have any personal liability. So they essentially are putting $6 billion in over 18 years, but then their personal assets are not at risk. And why this is such an issue is because they weren't a part of the bankruptcy. They weren't a party to the bankruptcy. It was Purdue Pharma, the corporation. Sure. So essentially what's happened is this corporation, which is its own legal entity, files for bankruptcy, and now these individuals who started the company and who are on the board now are also receiving the bankruptcy protection. And folks are saying, well, you weren't part of the bankruptcy, so you shouldn't get that protection. Right. The counter argument is, well, all of these creditors approved it. They know this is the most they're going to get from it. We should just go forward and pay them. And that's the benefit of bankruptcy. You get the money right away. There's not all this litigation. There's no, you know, so there's two sides.
So with the bankruptcy court, does that impact the settlement that states are receiving? Because we do get regular updates from the Attorney General, even here in Colorado, about settlement money that is coming into Colorado.
And that's the issue, is if they don't approve the settlement. And so then, and some folks are saying, well, what would happen then? Now you have all these individuals suing Purdue Pharma. The first judgment they get, they'll basically be out of money, essentially. So all of these people will not receive, because they said, there's been 500,000 people who have died from, you know, opioid-related issues. And so that's the problem, is should they allow this amount of money, $6 billion over 18 years, you know, that going to the victims here, the survivors, if you will, and giving the personal liability, or should these people still be accountable and not have to, because for 20 years, they were essentially making money and putting it away is the argument. And so now they're saying, look, that's not fair, because they knew this was addictive and continued to push it. And the two Purdue brothers who started it, or Sackler brothers who started it, were doctors, which made it even more egregious because they knew what was going on.
Really quickly before we go to break here, if you were a betting man, any idea on how the court might rule?
Well, based on the questions, I think the court is going to approve the settlement. I think they're saying, particularly the conservative justices were saying, look, the creditors approved it. This is the best they're going to get. Why disturb it? So I think that's what they'll do.
Interesting.
Well, thank you for coming in on a Saturday morning. We really appreciate it.